Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Clint McPherson. What's up, man?
Not much, brother. I'm just excited to be here again for another episode, to put another episode in the books as we continue to add value to our listeners' journeys and the various guests we continue to have on the show. And with that said, man, and outside of that, let's go ahead and kick this thing off by welcoming our special guest today, Adam Brown, to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, Adam, it's awesome to have you on the show today. Before we get into everything, can you tell us who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, I'll try to keep that succinct. I'm pretty long-winded. I'm Adam Brown. I live and work in Manhattan, which is where I am now. I tell people that these days they think I live in like a war zone. It's pretty peaceful outside my window right now, but I own a social media agency in New York, and we mostly provide outsourced social media management, content creation, and strategy for CPG, beverage, and spirit brands. So despite the pandemic that's going on, it's been, knock on wood, like a really good run over the last 4 months as consumers have been really interested in buying those things for their homes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, beverages I feel like are always going up. Alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
We do both. We do both. You kind of need both, and both have been doing pretty well.
That's awesome.
That's an awesome niche to be in, man. Especially, right? Like you said, knock on wood. But man, when something like this hits, that's unexpected to a lot of us, makes us pivot and change course in a lot of ways. And in a lot of businesses or entrepreneurs had to revamp the whole way they've done business, right? So for you, has that changed at all outside of obviously it could have, but when you're focused on social media, man, maybe not.
Yeah, and what I will say is, obviously, it seems like just sort of dumb luck that my category focus has been successful, but it was strategy, right? Like, I think just like I recommended to my clients all the time, we're not trend specific, right? So, like, for example, in the CPG business, a trend is keto. So if you're chasing keto, that stops, or some doctor says keto is no longer relevant, or someone dies from eating all keto, that could end, and then you're screwed, right? So if you take that and extrapolate that out into running an agency, I know a lot of people in New York that are like, events are hot, so I'm going to do event marketing, or there's so many restaurants in New York, I'm just going to like cold call restaurants. But if you think about it long term, like restaurants have very little margins. As soon as one thing goes wrong, they fire you. So when a pandemic hits, you lose all your clients in one day. So that category selection is not an ideal one. Sorry, my daughter just popped in. Another calamity of working from home. So, I think, apropos to your podcast and your audience, like from an entrepreneurial point of view, I'm very offense minded. I've always owned businesses, and I'm always thinking about how do I not get complacent, and how do I always think about being great. I've heard stories that Steve Jobs used to, like, as soon as an iPhone would come out, and I'm sure this isn't exactly true, but an iPhone would come out and like the next day he would like throw it on the table and be like, let's figure out why this phone sucks and let's make it better. And so I look at it the same way. And so I haven't had to change much other than there's been a lot of demand, and I just had to be empathetic to how businesses are thinking right now because of where the world's at. Hopefully I answered that question somewhere in there.
Oh, for sure, man. I think being offensive minded as an entrepreneur and not getting complacent is super, super important. And I mean, I think it's when you sit there and think you have everything figured out, and then the game changes. You get hit with a COVID, right? And then you're just not on the offense of how can I continue to move forward? And when you sit back and you're just like, oh, it's going to work itself out, and then you find yourself months into the game, and then nothing has worked itself out, right? Or things are trying to go back to somewhat of a normal, but what is even normal anymore, right? So that's super, man. I love how you touched on that point, because I really think that's huge and very important, man.
Yeah, and it's important to be excited and celebrate your successes, and as things are going well, be excited about that. But at the same time, I do think it is important to to say, all right, how to stress test everything and really think through it. Like, okay, how could this go wrong? And, if it goes wrong, what do we do? And especially in consulting, honestly, because I have a consulting business, and you think like, you get one big client and you're super excited for a couple months. Everything's good. Everything's super comfortable, but then you got to make sure that you keep getting customers and that they stay with you, so you've always got to be thinking about what the next thing is.
Yeah. And I'll say one thing to that. So anyone that knows me on LinkedIn, I think that's how we came across each other, and like my friends and like people that know me generally are like, man, you're so optimistic. Like you're like an Energizer bunny. Like it's great. But my employees, especially like my top employees, are like, man, are you negative? Like, damn. And I'm like, no. And I always say, I'm not pessimistic. I'm pragmatic, because if I had one big client, I would say, all right, this is potentially fatal because I have 80% of my eggs in one basket. How do I offset that? Like, so I'm always thinking that way. And I think when you're really in my immediate circle day to day, it's like, dude, like, can't we smell one rose for 1 second? And I'm like, so I'm trying to work on that, but you always just got to be thinking about the angles. And to be honest with you, I don't want to be too cliche. And, I'm a big Gary Vee fan. I know him personally. Our kids actually go to school together. You just have it in your DNA. And like, when you see him, when I run into him, where his brain is, my brain works that same way. I guess not everyone's built like that. They like to think they are, but they're not. It's like a weird LeBron higher level type thing that goes on. And when you have it, it's like the best.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's good. And I think honestly, just part of it could be living in a city like Manhattan, because there's so much energy there. My wife lived in Manhattan for a while. I'm from Philadelphia. So I, the North, I get that a little bit of that Northeast mindedness. But there's nothing like Manhattan, man. You just drive in and it just hits you. You just get this jolt of energy. Like, I want to do everything. There's so much I want to do, and it's not just like I want to go out and party. It's like I want to accomplish things. The city just kind of drives you, I think, to want to do all these cool things.
Totally. I was just talking about that with a friend from Boston. Like, I love Philly, Boston. I went to school in Ann Arbor, obviously. Like, what I don't love about New York is too much finance people. And so It's just like LA with movies, New York is finance. So if you're not in finance, it's like, oh, you're not in finance.
Yeah.
But
I don't think that's a bad thing though, to not be in finance.
I love
that's
it.
Okay.
But there's a lot of entrepreneurs like in other markets. And so my problem is when I'm in Philly or San Diego and I'm like, man, I could live here. Like this place is dope. But then like everyone's asleep at 9:00 in San Diego and you like can't even get dinner. And I'm like, what is happening here? So energy is hard to find elsewhere outside of New York.
Totally. Yeah. It's a unique vibe for sure.
Yeah. So Adam, with all that said, man, let's take it back a little bit. And as an investor yourself, an advisor of several companies, right, to include being the current founder and president of Circle Media, can you take us back to where your entrepreneurial journey actually started and what it is about entrepreneurship specifically, brother, that keeps that fire burning inside you, man?
Yeah, so I feel like I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I feel like I'm saying cliche things, but I apologize. It's just true. Like,
as long as it's organic and honest, man, we accept it, brother.
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 5 boys. I grew up in Long Island, and I had like older brother that became a doctor, older brother that became a lawyer. My dad's an eye doctor, and so it's like, which one are you gonna do, right? And I'm like, I've always been like, no, I don't think I'm gonna do any one of those things, like. And so I was like selling mixtapes, selling sneakers, always just like selling stuff. And then when I went to Michigan, only school I applied to. I ended up going to Brooklyn Law School. I went for 29 days because my dad was like, that's what you should do. And then I just dropped out and like tail between my legs, like left law school. And I was like, I feel like no matter what happens, and now we've had, multiple recessions. I'm 43. So I had the 2000 .com boom debacle. I had 2008 and I was working in finance, and now I have this. And I feel like I can always go back to selling something I believe in. And if I believe in something strongly enough, I believe I can start a company around it. And that was my entrepreneurial energy. And I think it's proven out. Like, sales at a very high level, because most people hate it. Sales at a very high level is a skill set that can allow you to be an entrepreneur. And I don't know if you pay attention to my content, but I've really been paying attention to that, kind of a little answering your question about investing. Like if I think a founder has sales, interest, and skills, that's like a 10x for me as far as confidence in them. And not all do, but I think sales and actually digging it, like liking sales, is a big thing and a contributor to my entrepreneurial journey and success.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think everybody had, even a business owner, an entrepreneur, I don't think everybody has that same passion for that desire to grow and to get more sales and to, I mean, everybody, they might say, yeah, I want to grow my company, or I want, sure, I want more income, whatever, but they might not really like that process. And I think some people, I'm that way too. I mean, I really enjoy, figuring out what are the mechanisms to help grow a business, and what can I do creatively? How can I think outside the box to build a successful business, and do it in a way that's it's not going to break the bank or be crazy risky, or so how can I do that within my means? And I think that's pretty exciting, especially when you're starting a business from scratch, and if you don't have a ton of capital, that's kind of exciting. And for some people that wouldn't be exciting, that would be like scary as hell.
Exactly.
For most people, people. Yeah. Well, that's why most people don't do it. I think anyone, if they could guarantee it, would love to stop working at some job and go do something. But it's like 90, I don't know the number, but 90% sales. You're selling your customer, you're selling retaining people, you're selling your employees, you're potentially selling investors, you're selling yourself, you're selling your wife, like you're selling everybody. And so if you don't really like it, then that sucks. And that's why you wouldn't do it. You maybe go backwards. So you have to have like that weird wiring for it. I look at it all as a game. In fact, like a lot of people say like, well, Adam, then why are you in client services? Like you're always getting disrespected. You're always getting told no, or like sunned or dismissed. And my employees are like, why do you take that? And I'm like, I love the game. I like the empathy of why he was so nasty. Literally yesterday, one of my clients, and I know he's 60, he's over 60, and he's done this in his life, and he doesn't want this. And I want to know how to outfox him and win that game and sell him back to where I want to get him. And most people would cower for that, but I sort of just get off on it. I really I enjoy
the challenge,
it.
Right?
I love it.
It's like, yeah, if you can accept the challenge and be like, challenge accepted, and I'm going to continue to figure out, like you said it perfectly, outfox them, right? Try to get them back on track and where you want them, and lead them down that path to success. And a lot of it's hard to teach, and I'm not calling your client an old dog, but usually when they're older, right, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and they don't want to change because everything they've done in the past hasn't been what you're saying, right? And so they've built a comfort level or comfort zone, and I fight that with my digital marketing agency on a regular basis. When you have an individual, I'll go in and get a client, and then I realize, oh my gosh, this client, he's an older individual and he doesn't want to do any of the new digital marketing stuff, right? He's like, why can't we just run paper ads? Why can't we do this? I'm like, dude, because that stuff, right? I mean, it can work, but for where you're at, the market, it's not calling for that right now, man. And you're losing the game if you're not in digital, period. And so once you get them on your side, and once they learn how to trust you, right? You build that trust with them. Then it's like you show them that little bit of success, and then they're like, oh man, let's roll with it. And that's what I love. Just like you said, it's like, it's a challenge that you're just like, dude, I'm going to show you this works. You have a negative connotation about this, but I'm going to show you why it's not negative and why you should run with it, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Adam, you talk about social media being a new term for the internet, and social networks are part of that ecosystem. What do you mean by that, and why is a holistic digital approach so important for your marketing?
Yeah, I mean, look, social, sort of a jump off of that last statement we said about this sort of old guy, new tricks. For most people, they're just like, they lump digital as just one big thing. And the reality is, for most brands these days, especially like early stage brands that I deal with, social is the internet, right? Like they're leapfrogging even Google ads. If they only have a nominal budget, they're not spreading it across multiple sort of platforms. Like it's focused on social ads. It's understanding how to like have business acumen and digital acumen and work with influencers and work with brand collabs and have a fundamental belief that paid social works and like all these different things. And so, you have to take a step back and understand the holistic point of view of these things. It's not just digital is where it's at, right? Hopefully that is where people are. I think what happens is, I say this all the time, like if you're really, really good, like some brands that you could probably think of even just as a consumer, you're like on the floor of the stock exchange and you're like an early person who knows how to pick stocks, or you run a hedge fund. The next level would be somebody who like reads Barron's or like the Financial Times. So like they know they're not on the floor and they're not like a zillionaire hedge fund owner, but like they know. And then there's like USA Today. By the time it hits USA Today in social, it's old. So if you're reading USA Today in Iowa and you're like, oh, TikTok, like by the time it's already like Instagram Reels. So a lot of small business owners, and I'm stereotyping, it doesn't have to be Iowa, Middle America, but just like anyone, could be right across the street in New York City. By the time they get around to it, social's so non-static that it's always old. So this guy, even worse, this guy that I was speaking to, he's like, what's up with Instagram followers? It's all about followers. Let's get my followers up. And I'm like, dude, I haven't even had to fight that fight in like a year plus. Like I used to fight it all the time, but like Instagram followers, really? And he's like, well, what? And I'm like, you tell me why Instagram followers are important. He was like, I don't know. My daughter said they're important. I'm like, dude, you're trying to get new eyeballs, right? So as soon as somebody becomes a follower, they're irrelevant because you want new eyeballs. That's your number one KPI. So that's what we're focused on. So, getting involved in that is a fun challenge. So anyway, answering your question, I just think they all touch each other. Content, what you're saying, who you're targeting, what do you want to have them do? Where do you sell them product? Rinse and repeat. And I think a lot of people are just like experimenting with like each thing. I said an analogy the other day that somebody said was pretty funny. It's like going in a boat and going out on Long Island on your boat and driving out 4 hours in the middle of the night to go catch like tuna and like not bringing the right rod or having the right equipment or the right bait and being like, ugh, and then like going back. And like that's how people are dabbling in digital. They're like, I have the boat and I'm out where the tuna is, but they haven't thought about how am I going to get the tuna and then how am I going to get it on the boat? And then what do you include it on the boat? That's my analogy for where most people are blowing it when it comes to digital and social.
Or they're fishing for something other than tuna and they're catching tuna and they're
Totally.
like, oh wait, I'm throwing this back. That's not what I wanted.
They don't even know. They're like, is this a tuna? Is this a mackerel? I don't even know what this like. So it's a funny joke and we can sort of play the analogy out, but yes, that's where I think most are at. And we try to fix that.
Interesting. What do you think if you had to guess, because I mean, I feel like there's something, obviously Facebook and Google are the two big places to reach people. And obviously there's Pinterest and TikTok and there's other stuff, but Facebook and Google, what do you think the next big thing is in terms of where people's attention will be? And, people talk about how Facebook is hyper targeted. I actually think there's going to be something that comes out in the near future that's way better than Facebook, where you can dial in this person wants this exact product. And we know because we're getting better information and we're not getting it in like a creepy way. But I don't know. What do you think? Does that make any sense? And what do you think the next thing is in where the attention is going to go?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I think Amazon is the now, right? So like I just hung up with a pitch. I thought it was gonna be 30 minutes. It was an hour. And the guy asked good questions. And he's like, how am I allocating my spend? And he hired an Amazon agency even before hiring me. And, he didn't even realize, I'm like, if you have this X amount of budget, let's call it $10,000 a month, maybe it's $5,000 Facebook, Instagram ads, top of funnel, down funnel conversions, and then it's 5,000 Amazon. He's like, oh my God. I thought you were going to say Google. And I was like, no, you gotta hire an Amazon assassin. You gotta spend money there because that's the shopping mall. And you got to be okay with like how you're going about it and what the margins are, and that you're not going to get the data. But if you want scale and you want awareness, and you want a halo effect for your brand, like Amazon is not the then, it's the now. So you should be spending on Amazon. Kind of the answer to spirit of your question. First of all, like TikTok is that. Like TikTok's algorithm is spooky scary. Like I'll watch a soccer video like of like, you know, Ronaldo with my daughter, and like I am firebombed with soccer content like 2 seconds later. So it's even more sensitive. The trigger on it is even more sensitive, probably because advertisers haven't ruined it yet. So like that's an interesting one. And you see, I don't know if you see these I'm getting constantly hit with ads like, you've been approved for a $300 credit to try TikTok ads. And even Snap ads right now are kind of nasty and like can really target. And some of those kids have aged up. So I think if you had some extra shekels to throw around and you wanted to mess with like straight awareness, Snap and TikTok in their ads platform are still pretty like inexpensive, highly targeted and like based on behavior. So I think you could mess around in those areas. And I'm a little hot on podcasts. Like I think if you find the right podcast about a specific niche, you have to be a little bit calculated about how you're going about it. But like as a real nice awareness play, I don't think it's a terrible idea to think about some like very niche specific podcast, like in podcast reads, and then like a digital manifestation, maybe an affiliate deal. I think there's some awareness there that might be attractive.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. So Adam, let's talk about one of the most important assets we should all have as entrepreneurs in our business ventures, right? And when I say that, that's basically the team that we surround ourselves with, right? Or the individuals that we surround ourselves with to make something special. So in your opinion and how you've grown Circle Media, how important is it to surround yourself with a team, or like I noticed on your website, which I thought was pretty cool, a squad, right? Of excellent, people who are actually passionate about what they're doing, about their specific role, and actually care about each other. Basically creating that family, man.
I really think it's everything. And especially as like when things start to accelerate, you even experience it more, right? So like my team is solid. We definitely have some stronger people than weaker people, but they all sort of contribute to the community. So that's a big thing for me, like good people, good humans. That's like the cost of entry. Obviously, knowing how to navigate social media, if you're a social media manager, that's also a cost of entry. So it's not about that. It's more about like the kind of person. So like my interview questions are like, what was the first way you made money? I want to know different attributes about that person to tell me somebody worked as like a waiter or they worked in retail as like a kid before they went to college. Usually tells me like they've been through the thick of the crap. They dealt with customers. I think that's a big thing. I think that's important. You really want people that you would fly across the country with. So I use that as a benchmark also. We do 2 rounds of interviews, me and my number 2, and then another round with our personnel director and one of the other directors. And we score them on all these different sort of mechanisms. And most of it comes down to, do they have that hustle and energy? Are they going to fit into my brand? Not everyone fits in with my brand. I come strong. I'm intense. Like I send Monday motivation emails to my team every single Monday for 8 years. I send Wednesday hump day hype emails. So if you're not motivated, those are like annoying as hell. And so you're not going to be a fit. So I just really want to find somebody that like fits that box. And then that team allows me to do what I do. If I didn't have them, I'd just be I'm dealing with fires all the time anyway. But if I didn't have them, I'd be constant firefighting and I would not be able to grow. So it's a major area of focus and attention for me.
Yeah. I really think it's important. And I agree with you, man, because I think as entrepreneurs, we lose oversight sometimes of how important the team around us is, right? You got this person doing that, you got this person doing that, but they're operating in their own bubble. You're not communicating with them. But I really think to build that family dynamic, or at least have it to where you can fly across the country or wherever and actually have that good relationship. And even at times, people that will take criticism the right way, right? Like when you come at them, you've already told them how to do it the right way, or shown them the way they need it needs to be done, or whatever. You give them the flexibility of doing it their own way, and they don't accomplish the mission like you want them to do it. then it's like, okay, this is what you did wrong. This is how you can get better. But if they continuously make those mistakes, man, you know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things that you got to actually have that heart to heart, and they have to have thick skin sometimes, right? We're not in here trying to hurt people's feelings, but at the end of the day, we have things to accomplish. We have fires to put out, like you just said. And I really think it's important, man, to surround ourselves and not lose sight of that and have that conversation with your team. Make sure you're always on the same page.
Totally. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs start out and their plan is to not be that, right? Like maybe they left that because they didn't want to be at this company dealing with the BS. And like to be a successful entrepreneur with a business that scales, you kind of have to, now you're the other guy or girl. You're the one making the processes and procedures. And it's funny, like most people complain in life, but then when push comes to shove and that now they've been given the keys, they can't figure it out. And then they don't have empathy for the one that they didn't like. So anyway, the net result is if you want to do it, other than like the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, and I love Tim Ferriss, but like most of the time it's like a lot of hard work and it's team building. And unless you're really focused and rooted in that and actually care about it, because it's a big pain in the butt, to be honest with you. But if you're not focused on that, you're really going to have a trouble really seeing like the top of the mountains as far as success when it comes to your entrepreneurial journey. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. And as a small business, you really have to make sure you have to be extra careful that you're surrounding yourself with great people, right? Because every dollar is super important. And you know, if you're hiring somebody, especially in the US, like if you're not outsourcing something overseas, that's obviously less risky because if it doesn't work out, you know, it's probably not a salaried employee and they're not making as much money as somebody would be in the US. But yeah, if you've got, you know, a good solid team in this country with you, you know, you gotta be super careful. So,
totally. Look, if you have a 4-person team, one bad egg is 25% of your workforce.
Right.
Like that's not
Right.
good. And
Yeah,
it's the whole thesis of my agency. Like I'm saying to a brand, and back in 2012, this wasn't the case. Like people thought social was a fad. People were like, you know, my niece does that. Like it was very dismissive. Nowadays, it's like, oh, okay, I need social. And so our pitch is like, look, you can't guess wrong. If you're gonna underinvest, you're gonna look for an entry-level salary. You're gonna try to pay as little as you can. If you think about that logically, that person is probably not gonna have all the things you need. And even if they did, are they a good egg? And let's say you guess wrong, you have to rehire, retrain, redo it. There's like so much cost to it. So Circle literally provides that rock star employee. So if you think about it, I have to have that mentality on full tilt so that my employees are like that on full tilt. So that when I plug them into a company, they're like, man, like Michelle is a rock star. Like, dude, she works harder than anyone on our team. Like that's sort of what I'm selling. So I have to start with that culture. Otherwise I'm not providing and backing up what I said I would be providing.
Yeah, exactly. And how cool is that to be able to plug one of your team members into another company and they like outperform people who are full-time employees at that company. I mean, that's amazing. Very cool. So we talked a little bit about podcasting earlier. You mentioned that you're pretty hot on it right now. And you have a podcast called Inner Circle, which is very cool. I was listening to some of it. I like how they're short bits and, you know, really give you, like, I could have just gone through one after the other to get, you know, some really good condensed information about different topics, which I thought was really cool. As podcasters ourselves, we've seen how impactful it has been to grow our network and connect with amazing people like yourself. How does podcasting fit into your marketing strategy, and how has it been working so far to get new clients, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, good one. So I look at it as what I really like, and it goes back to like my gamification sort of DNA is like, I like things that have double value. I like efficiency. So like, even if I work out, I'd rather do like high knees that's going to get my cardio and work my abs than just do something that's just going to do my cardio, so that I'm doing two things at once. So with business, I'm like, all right, I'm on Anchor. So I should be on Anchor. When Anchor came out, that's relevant. I'm a social media agency. I should be on Anchor. I should be able to articulate it. So I got on it early. Second, it's like a free platform where I can quickly record a thought and then use it and then get that out to my team. So now it's training for my team. it's inner circle because it's supposed to be like for my inner circle, like my clients, maybe my team, people that are like around me. So that's like the name and the branding. Inner circle makes a lot of sense. And then, every Friday we send a close of business email to every one of our clients, and I touch on a topic. So my team will be like, sometimes they'll be like, hey, Adam, I really need you to touch on why influencers are irrelevant. And if you look at my podcast, I've done that probably like 32 times. But they can do it. So then it's like a thought leader. So they could say, hey, and also Adam recorded this week his position on why influencers don't matter. So now instead of them having to fight the fight as like a junior employee, they're getting that. And then the client feels like, oh, wow, well, if Adam said it, that must mean something. And it's timely. He actually said that this week. And they also feel like they're getting me, because a lot of times when people hire probably you guys or me, like they like us, we're a salesperson, and they're like, well, we hired the dynamo and then you gave us a kid. And that's not good. I sell the kid, I'm the cherry on top, but I still am logical. Like I get that they still want some of me. So it's another way for me to get that to them without having to call each client. So it's really, I've checked a lot of boxes just by doing something as simple as knocking out a bunch of anchor recordings. And I would say I do probably 1 or 2 a week for like years. So now there's an inventory, and I don't care about like, do a lot of people listen to them? No, not really. But every once in a while, like a client's like, yo, I listened to that and that was great. Or I referred you someone else because of what you said about like, so I just do it for the long game, not for any sort of like micro win that might come from it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you're necessarily planning on generating a ton of ad revenue or something from your podcast, but it serves all these other purposes. And I mean, that's the way it works for us, because I mean, right now it's been so important for us to grow our network. It's been, and if that's the best thing that ever happens from this podcast, aside obviously from, be worth it. Yeah. I mean, obviously the whole idea is for us to help entrepreneurs and to give them really good value. But then for us, in terms of like what we're getting out of it, if the best thing that ever happens is that network, that's cool. I mean, that's really powerful. So yeah, I do love, and Clint and I have talked about it a bunch about how podcasting is so efficient. There's multiple things you can do with it. You can transcribe it, get written content up on your website. You get a backlink for, if you're a guest on somebody else's podcast. So yeah, it's definitely been a really cool medium.
Yeah. So Adam, man, through your entrepreneurial journey, brother, what, from the highs to the lows, everything you've experienced to date, what has been the most difficult thing for you, man?
Yeah. Well, so I used to be in the mortgage business. And at the height, I owned a company with my brother. At the height, we had 1,000 employees. So we were a big company. I think we were the 13th largest FHA lender in the nation. And we were, it was just a company that we started in 1995, and my brother started and I joined later. But on January 25th, 2010, 10 years ago, crazy. We just lost our FHA license. I got a fax. Someone rolled over and was like, we just lost our license. Like, what is this? I was like, what? And it was during the time, it was a long time ago now, you probably won't remember, but obviously the economy was in weird place and the FHA lending had like lost all of its money. Obama was like trying to figure out what they're going to do. And they ended up pulling a lot of FHA licenses. So basically, to answer your question, I was running this company. I ran sales and marketing. I probably had like 600 salespeople. I got this fax, and it was our 15th anniversary, January 25th. And I had to go up and say, hey, everybody, come join in. We effectively lost our FHA license. I need everyone to go home, and pretty much told everyone they lost their job. That was nuts. That was not anything I wish on anybody. The silver lining is I hated that industry, and I'm stoked to be out of it. The downside is it took quite a bit of time to get back to the income I was making, a decade ago. And so that was probably the hardest thing I ever had to deal with.
Wow. Yeah. That's
not
a big
so awesome.
knock.
Not so awesome.
Well, no, just awesome story. How, I mean,
Yeah.
you came full circle, right?
I'm just playing. Good pun intended on the circle.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. The inner circle. Yeah. That's wild. I mean, that's a crazy story, and hopefully something that not a lot of people have to go through, but, Yeah. And when you're responsible for that many people, that would be really tough for
Yeah,
sure.
I don't wish that experience on anyone, but
could have been a crushing blow, man. I don't know, dude. I felt so bad. I know you were crushed.
That was nuts. Yeah, it was not great.
Well, it's all like you said. There's a silver lining, and there's a silver lining to everything. I think most things at least. So that's good. Good that you're in a place where you want to be right now. So, Adam, as we wrap up this episode, what is one piece of advice you could leave our listeners to kind of help them on their entrepreneurial journey?
I just think if you are an entrepreneur, meaning you're owning your own game and you want the upside of governing your own rules and having it your own way, then you just have to put in the work that's commensurate with that. And I'm not saying like go hustle and rip faces like a lot of other people say in our space. But the underlying spirit of that is what I'm saying. So you have to put in the work. No one gets there without working hard to get there. I'd say, like I would say to anybody else, reverse engineer what you want to have happen. It's funny. When I was in the mortgage business, I'll give you a quick aside. I'd have all these like young salespeople. They'd come in and they all be like, I want to make $100,000 a year. All right. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, how much is that a month? And like literally 99.9%, no one knew. So I'm like, all right, that's 83.33 a month. Cool. So how many loans would you have to sell to do that? And then they were like, I have no idea. I'm like, that'd probably be like about 4 loans a month. So 1 a week. Have you ever done that before? I'm like, no, I've never done that before. Like, all right, so what are you going to do to get there? Like, it was like, we go through this process. I would say if you're an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean an exit of $1 billion company. That doesn't mean you sold a $50 million company. It might mean, you know what, man, I'm stoked to make $250,000 a year and do what I want to do and feel amazing about what I'm doing every day and run a small team and be with my husband, wife, whatever. And so I think you should really think about the end goal and then reverse engineer if it's realistic, and then soul check. Am I willing to do what I need to do to get to that end goal? And then just every single day remind yourself of that end goal and march towards it. And then when hard things happen, just look at the goal and be like, I can choose not to move forward, or I can move forward towards that goal. And it comes down to a soul check of like how important that goal is to you. And if it's really important, it'll keep you on track. And if not, you can quit and go in a different direction, and that's okay. But I think it's very important to think about where you're headed, not just jumping in and being like, let's see what happens. Because I think that's a dangerous recipe. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many factors to it, to any business. I think it's so like, I'll come up with ideas for a business and like kind of get excited about it. Like, man, this could be really cool. But then I'll do that calculation real quick. Okay, I want to make this amount per year of revenue, or even, take a step further. I want to make this from it per year. Obviously, it might take a couple of years to get there, whatever, but this is what I want to make. So this is what I'm going to have to sell. And in some cases, the margin could be really low. So I have to sell more of something. And how am I going to do that? Can I do that? Is there enough market? Is there enough demand for it? Or even if there's enough demand for it, I might not have enough capital and understanding of actually how to grow it to that level, So just because there's enough market for something doesn't mean you're going to just sell something like crazy overnight or in any kind of reasonable amount of time. So yeah, doing that reverse calculation, reverse engineering on what you want to get out of it is so important from the beginning, because you can put an idea to rest right away and that's such an easy thing to do. It's such an easy calculation to go through and so important. I think a lot of people really aren't doing that. They get a few years in and they're like, well, I can't stop now, but I'm not even close. I should have figured this out from the beginning, and that's tough.
Totally. So I would say yellow pad it out, or go in a Google Doc, plan it out. What could it be? What do I need to do to get there? And then just get into it and put in the action and the effort to get there.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love that. I love that, just for the simple fact that a lot of people, when they go into something, they're not going to usually put the time in to be successful at that something, right? It's the same thing with how everybody's selling courses. That's why those individuals are getting rich off these courses, because they know even if they teach you the way they do it and they lay the blueprint out, you're going to get bored along the way somewhere, or you're not going to see success right off the bat, and then you're going to quit, right? Because they know you're not putting that legwork in, and it's like it's a genius model for them for sure. But it's soul crushing for that entrepreneur, right? The guy that wants to run his own business, but then is like, dude, it's not this quick, get rich quick scheme, right? Mm-hmm. And they realize that and get punched in the face. So
yeah, definitely.
So, well, guys, I think that's a wrap for this episode, man. From the both of us, Adam, we want to thank you for taking the time into your day, brother, to join us and adding value to what we're doing on our podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was excellent. And whatever you need me to do as far as getting awareness around this conversation, you just let me know, and I'm happy to help you guys. I'd like to see you guys win.
That's awesome. Yeah, we really appreciate that, Adam. It's been a fun conversation. And I think, we'll have to have you back because there's so much more I think we could talk about.
I'm always game. And if you're ever messing around with other formats too, you get groups on, whatever, hit me up and I can be there in pretty short amount of time.
Awesome. Love that. So guys, thank you so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Adam is working on, check out circle.me. That's SIRCLE.me. If you like what you heard today, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or any other major podcast directory. You can also find us on all the socials and on our website at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
And with that said, guys, we also want to quickly give a special shout out to our family and friends, include all of our listeners, our followers and subscribers. If you find value in our show, please consider making a small donation. Even just a few dollars helps us keep things moving along and helps bring value to your entrepreneurial journey. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.